How does Spring manage resources differently in a web application context? Spring Framework helps manage resources in web applications by using a system that controls how parts of the application are created and connected. This system, called the IOC, that is Inversion of Control Container, makes it easier to manage things like database connections and settings for different parts of the application. Spring handles these tasks automatically, helping the application run more efficiently and making it easier for developers to maintain and update it. What is the role of at path variable in Spring MVC? In Spring MVC, at the rate of path variable annotation helps grab parts of the URL and use them in our code. For example, if we have a URL like slash users slash 123, using at path variable allows us to take the 123 part, use it in our program to do things like looking up information. It makes it easy to handle web pages that need to change based on what the URL says. How can you extract values from a URL using at path variable? To extract values from a URL using at path variable in Spring MVC, we include placeholders in the URL pattern of our method like get mapping, that is users. You can see the braces, under the braces there is a user ID. Here user ID is a placeholder in our method. We use at path variable with a parameter, for example, at path variable string user ID to capture the value from the URL. This lets us use the value directly in our method, like fetching user details with the ID. What are the considerations when using a path variable in terms of URL design? When designing URLs with at path variable, make sure the names of path variables clearly show that what they represent, like using a user ID for user IDs. Keep URLs simple and logical to avoid confusion. Watch out for conflicts between fixed parts of a URL and the variable parts. Also, make sure every URL is unique and consistent throughout our application so they clearly point to the right parts of our program. How does at path variable interact with other request mappings? At path variable works with other request mapping annotations in Spring MVC by taking parts of the URL and using them as a parameters in our methods. For example, if we set up a URL pattern with at request mapping or at get mapping, at path variable can pick up specific parts of that URL like an ID or a name and send them to our method. This makes our web application flexible, allowing it to handle URLs that change based on user inputs. How does Spring MVC use local resolver? Spring MVC uses local resolver to manage internationalization by figuring out the local or a regional settings for each request. This can be based on things like session data, cookies, or browser settings. Once the local is determined, it helps display text, dates, and numbers in ways that fits the user's location and language. This makes the application user friendly globally and showing information in the local format and language preferred by the user. Can you provide an example of changing languages dynamically on the front end? To change languages on a website dynamically, we can add a drop down menu where users pick their languages. When a user selects a language from the menu, the choice can be saved in the browser or sent to the server. Then the website updates its text to match the chosen language. This way, the language changes right way and the user does not have to reload the page to see it. Discuss the use of WebMVC annotations like at session attributes and at cookie value. In Spring MVC, at session attributes helps keep data across multiple pages, like during a multi-page form process. It saves certain data in user's session, so we don't lose it between different steps. On the other hand, At cookie value lets us use information stored in cookies like user settings or login status. This makes it easier to personalize and site without having to ask for the same details again. What are the security considerations using at session attributes and at cookie value annotations? When using at session attributes and cookie value in Spring MVC, it's most important to handle security carefully. With at session attributes, make sure not to store sensitive data in the session where it might be stolen. For a cookie value, be careful about what we store cookies and use security settings to protect them. This helps prevent issues like someone stealing cookies data or manipulating our website through scripts, that is XSS attacks. Always focus on keeping sessions and cookies secure. How do you test Spring MVC applications? To test Spring MVC applications, we can use tools like JUnit for running tests and Mockito for handling mock objects. Spring also provides a tool called Mock MVC that lets us simulate sending HTTP requests to our application and check the responses. This setup helps us make sure our app is working as expected by testing different parts, such as checking if the right page loads and if the data response is correct.